Okay, if we could get started. I'm sorry if I can get your attention. It's always a good sign at a conference that that people are getting social and also and want to talk to each other, and also want to go sightseeing and everything else. So we'll I hope we can hold an audience. One of the things I've noticed, one of the unfortunate things about the Times is that we've had at least 3 people who have had visa problems, and it's often people who nationality in one country and working in another country and coming here, and they've had holdups in visa approvals and so forth. And that is the case with our first speaker, who unfortunately, yes, and we really apologize for that. I don't know what country is responsible, but I'm sure it's not the speaker. But so we'll have a short. We're gonna ask the speaker to stay to 10 minutes maximum because it's a Skype call, and I think social presence still matters. So so we'll try to keep it to 10 minutes. Follow up with questions, and then we'll go on to the other speakers. And by the way, in case you haven't noticed, I'm not Patty Riley. And I'm Bill Dutton, and I'm going to stand in for Patty because she and her husband have been held up in, on airlines and so forth. But she's expected this afternoon, so hopefully she'll be at dinner. Okay. All right. So please continue. Thank you for joining us remotely. So, yes, Sonya, if you could go ahead and start.
I'm sorry I cannot deliver my speech in person because the British consulate in New York screwed off my visa and they failed to return my I-20 form. I cannot travel outside the States. And I'm truly really convinced that the consulate is complying with the Chinese government and try to censor me from this conference. So here today I want to talk about censorship. And now I'm sharing my screen with you. So, could you tell me if you can see my screen?
I'm trying to get the lights turned down. Could you turn the lights just a bit, so we can see? But yes, but we can see your slides very well. Okay. Okay. So carry on.
Let's get going. So, censorship doesn't happen only in the era of internet. It happened thousands of years because here is an example from the like a factory and forgetting. So in 1948, the communist leader Clement was accompanied by his comrade Clemens. That's the guy behind the microphone. But 4 years later, in the photo, you cannot see this guy anymore. The guy was covered by the microphone because this comrade Clemens was charged with treason and harm. The propaganda section immediately airbrushed him out of the history. Ever since Xiaoyue has stood on that factory alone, where the damages stood, there's only their talents for. So, and now we have the internet. Not only internet is the media being heavily censored. And I want to give you 3 examples how the internet censorship has been studied. The first one is the Open Now initiative that is conducted by the Berkeley Center at Harvard. They have constantly tested availability of websites in different countries and try to rate those governments, how they control content related to politics, social issues, intellectuals, and conflicts. And Bauman and his colleagues published a study focused on Weibo, that's the leading social media platform in China, and they claimed that's the first large-scale analysis of political content censorship. What they have found is the deletion rate is over 16%. And the messages published in Tibet and other outlying provinces have seen 50% of their messages deleted. Beyond Weibo, Gary King and his colleagues published a study this year. They collected data from nearly 1400 Chinese social media platforms. Their finding is actually it's not the criticism of the government is censored. Rather, it is the messages that try to mobilize people to do something together, even though it's pro government or the party. So I found something interesting as well. I found, patterns sort of significantly associated with this censorship. And what we're really excited about is it may be the first study So this is our effort. So how to define censorship? This is the one defined by Paddock in 1993. Censorship could be defined as the systematic control of the content of communication by a government through various means. So here I want to elaborate on three key phrases. Systematic control, that means it's not random or sporadic. And second is special content. Again, you can see repeated patterns in the content. And various means is in the era, the internet, you can delete copies from the servers, but still you can burn the bugs, just what like Keyi did before. And also you could confiscate somebody's computers, cameras, and before typewriters. And also we often hear that some reporter is jailed in the country. So that's another way to censor information. But the ultimate way to do it is to kill someone, to just finish everything. And here, I want to tell you about categorization of censorship. There are different ways to do it. Prevention versus suppression. Proactive versus reactive. Static versus dynamic. But I believe they all boil down to two categories: pre-censorship and post-censorship. Pre-censorship means that, as a reporter, I want to cover something, but I think, maybe it's too sensitive. So that means actually professional reporters have a blacklist that you will use all the time and say, for instance, in China, we have 3 T's as sensitive topics: Tiananmen, Tibet, and Taiwan. So you should never cover them without extra caution. Whereas post-censorship is something, that is off the blacklist. You believe that is okay to publish it, but actually it still causes public outcry, and in the end, get deleted. So my study is focused on post-censorship because I found it really hard to study pre-censorship because I need to interview the insiders to get scoops. But again, I would put them into dangerous situations because they are afraid of whistleblowers. So also Paddock in 1993 summarized some objectives of censorship. They are about maintaining political and social order to oppose separations, and also protect the national interests and security, prevent alternative historical interpretations. And on another level, we try to curb religious intolerance and to guarantee policies or individuals from being attacked, and also try to keep your army from being attacked. So actually, I started this study out of my personal curiosity because very often I hate a broken thing. Then I asked myself, is it a common practice in China? Well, actually, it's just random. So this is the question. How many stories are deleted every day? Are they sporadic, random, or actually it's a regular practice? And then why are some stories deleted? So that's a question about patterns. What kind of patterns can we discern from these deletions? Unfortunately, I got funding from the Google Policy Fellowship last year. So I have this chance to examine 3 websites, and they are Sina North America, Sina Beijing, and NetEase. Sina and NetEase are 2 leading news portals in China. So I want to make 2 pairs of comparisons. The first is to compare Sina North America to the Beijing branch, because they're operated by the same company, just because they are located in different countries. Would they operate differently? And also I want to compare Sina Beijing to NetEase, because they are independent internet companies, but just because they are located in China, would they actually run in a similar way? So the data collection is really straightforward. So first, I brought all the links from those websites, and on the right side, you can see I'll check the links repeatedly, again and again, day and night. On the left, you can see I try to archive the web pages in case some of them are deleted later. I do want to keep a copy. And then I wrote another code to parse the web pages to extract title, publication time, and other things. So how I want to give you a rough sense, what kind of stories are deleted? The first group is about death tolls, about disasters and accidents. If many people are injured or killed, definitely that story is not convenient to be published. And the second one is about land. So say land acquisition, about relocation of villagers. There are so many conflicts are rising, for this reason. And the third one is about pollution. Pollution of the air. As you have seen, in Beijing, the air is so smoky. And pollution of water, of soil, and food. And the fourth one is about a company, say Foxconn. Because last year, so many workers committed suicide. So there must be something going on in the company. And about milk powder, about food. So they're kind of about commercial side of the country. But still, it's related to the social order. So here's the aggregation level. So NetEase aggregate about 7,000 to 10,000 news stories every day, whereas Sena aggregates about 2,000 stories on the two branches. This is the deletion rate. Sena North America hasn't been seen to delete any news story, whereas NetEase and Sena Beijing delete stories regularly. But after all, the overall deletion rates are under 1%. Every day, NetEase deletes about 3 stories, and Sena Beijing deletes about 2 stories. And then, thanks to 2 master students at the University of Hong Kong, they manually coded all the deleted stories. There are these aspects. First, the news outlet, party organ, or commercial media, because we would assume that party organs wouldn't publish inconvenient facts about the locale as international news or domestic news. If it's international, in which country the story happened? If this is domestic news, in which province the story happened? But I single out Beijing and Tibet because Beijing is the center of everything, politics, culture, and economics. Tibet, I singled out because it was found to be a significant factor in that study because Tibet had 50% of deletion rate, as a province, as a region in China. So I singled it out. But in the end, you see that it's actually not significant in my study. And then I coded topics, politics, entertainment, sports, etc. And nature of news, negative, neutral, or positive. Or the next one is breaking news or not. So the statistical method I was using is called real event logic. It's a logic method developed by political scientists because very often they're facing the rare events such as coups, wars, and collapse of nations. And actually similar in my case because the overall deletion rate is under 1%. A regular logic regression cannot do a great job with this kind of case that is off the curve. So here's my regression model. I just put everything as variables. Here's the result. So this is the result from the data collected from the United. So all the big bold lines show the significant results. The first group, domestic, national, and Beijing. That means the government is more concerned about what's happening within the country and the things that have a national-wide impact. And Beijing, as the center of the country, definitely anything happening here is not trivial. And the second group you can see is positive or negative. If it is positive, it has only 1/3 of the chance to be deleted. And if it's negative, so the chance will increase to almost 4 times. And topics are politics, food safety, military, science, foreign affairs. Politics, of course, that's very sensitive. Food safety is a significant problem in China. And military and foreign affairs are about the stories over the islands that we dispute with neighboring countries. Science and tech, just because so many workers committed suicide last year at Foxconn, so that story has been listed on the blacklist. So similar patterns are seen on the results, from Sena Beijing's data. So I will just skip this one. Now I want to compare the deletion rate from my study to Bannon's study. On the left, that's news portals deletion rates. On the right, that is deletion rate found on social media, or Sena Weibo to be exact. So the darker that is, the more news or messages are deleted. On the left, you can see more news were deleted around Beijing. Beijing is that place with a red star. And on the right, you can see on the left, that's Tibet, Qinghai and Xinjiang, where more minority people live. So you can see in those online provinces, messages were heavily deleted, far from Beijing. So why there's such a big difference? So why we have only found under 1% news deleted on news portals, whereas 60% of messages are deleted from social media? I offer 3 explanations. First one is social media are facing spamming as a problem, whereas news portals don't have this problem at all. That means the spams that are deleted every day are also counted in the deleted messages. Also, social medias are mostly used by online users, and they have not censored themselves. Others don't know what information is sensitive, or actually they don't care because they don't mind. Being, I would say, they don't think that they will be fined or they will be jailed. But professional journalists definitely have a pre-censorship list on their mind, so they wouldn't publish anything that is too sensitive. That's why for news portals, there isn't that much information to be deleted afterwards. That's why the post-censorship rate is quite low. And here's a map I want to show you the deletion amount across around the world. Definitely we see China and the USA has a very bittersweet relation because we censor a lot of news about the US. And also you see around China, those neighboring countries definitely have, more sensitive information. It's mostly about disputable territories, about those, rocks gathered in the oceans, because we really care what kind of things we can get around the rocks. And then Burma was heavily censored last year because Burma announced to curb censorship in the country, and the Chinese government was not happy about it. So deleted all the stories about Burma's curb of censorship. So from my empirical findings, what I can infer, right? So at least 2 major websites have shown similar patterns. And then that could be inferred as systematic control, which is the quintessential component of the definition of censorship. So we are really attempting to announce that we have confirmed and quantified the online news censorship in China. And also we have found the patterns are highly aligned with the intents of censorship defined by Patricia. For instance, to delete hot political news in order to keep ideological purity, to delete military news to strengthen national security, and so on. So here we see NetEase and Singer are independent companies, but they behave in similar ways. Definitely, we believe, this country is practicing censorship on a regular basis because the instructions are definitely from a higher level of institute beyond and above those commercial websites. So definitely we have limitations in this study because we have only examined 3 websites and we only have examined post-censorship. But we believe that what cannot be discovered or verified is probably far greater and more serious than what can be. In the future, we aim to examine more websites. Perhaps we will leverage linguistic software to automate the coding. Here's my presentation, and you can find a summary of the study on my blog. If you want to have further discussion, please email me. My email address is sonya@msu.edu. And this is a picture I took in Beijing back in 2006. And this is guys living so happily under the propaganda sign. And I think that's a very appropriate metaphor for this kind of study. Thank you very much.
It's a really informative empirical study. Maybe there's some questions about your either methods or the data itself. It's really, I don't think I've seen that fine of data on the exact patterns of censorship, so I'm sure other people may. Any questions while we have Sonya online?
A
Yes.
quick comment that I take some issue with the definition of censorship because she classifies journalists as doing free censorship. I would say that there is some element of that, but it's not even mostly attributable to free censorship. It would be, as you mentioned, spam plays a large part for the reason why social media is censored. And journalists, by definition, will be producing news.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference right there.
So we're questioning whether you might be overemphasizing pre-censorship or self-censorship. How do you have any basis for worrying that this is much larger or as large as you think it is? Or
So then paraphrase it, because I didn't hear it very clearly. So you think pre-censorship, the extent of pre-censorship is much larger than post-censorship?
well, the question is that you might. The worry is that you might be exaggerating pre-censorship or self-censorship.
How do you tell pre-censorship apart from the
Spam.
that happens on social media? So that difference between the news sites and the social media sites. Can we say that's pre-censorship, or is that really spam? Is there any way to disentangle those?
Oh, so on social media there is spam, but on news portals there is no spam because all the content is controlled by the online editors. They would spam their own websites. So everything has a meaning. Whereas on social media, you have spammers, you have advertisers and other people, they will just put up anything they wish. But then social media would hire people to delete those irrelevant content from the websites. Did I answer your question? And because that's also the BAM's claim. So BAM tried to explain why the deletion rate was so high as 16%. And he believes that it's caused by spamming. And also because some people, for instance, I published my photo on my Twitter today, and tomorrow I found, I really don't like this photo, then I just go delete it. So that's counted as deletion rate at all. Because this kind of study is done in around the black box. What you can see is the result, but the reason is always quite mysterious. You have to, guess why that happened in this way.
Yeah. I know my own experience is when I have blogged for government agencies and so forth, I self-censor a lot because I know that I can't say so much, so that I've only been censored a couple of times, and most of mine is self-censorship, and so I would imagine that it's much higher than censorship. I don't know, but again, it's impossible without doing qualitative research with individuals and interviews with individual journalists. It would give you a guesstimate. A question here, and then over, Roger after. Yes, Miss.
Thank you so much. I was wondering, as you expand this, if you would also look at how Weibo in particular might be filtered out and how that affects the amount of information that is censored in a broader sense. So not things that are directly deleted, but that are filtered from search results from users. And maybe they'll be looking at keywords filtering out certain Weibo, that actually the censorship rate of those microblogs would be even higher than 16%.
Were you able to hear the question?
Could you repeat the question for me?
Maybe.
This device is actually in the camera. Good. But if you
Would you restate it? What?
the mic is in the webcam here. So
Maybe you could come up and ask. Yeah, because I don't want to rephrase your question.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
if you want to speak at the camera, you don't. If you should just speak here, this way.
Oh.
At the camera.
Hello, I was wondering, in furthering your research, if you
There you
looked at, oh my.
There.
I'm so sorry. In addition to direct deletion of, for instance, Weibo posts, if you might also look at how many Weibo are filtered out by keywords that are blocked.
Yes, exactly. So that's part of the post-censorship. Because first, I assume that you would have a sort of mechanism to find the stories or the messages that cause problems. Because I know a group of Chinese academics are studying so-called public opinion. They try to see what public opinion would cause more traffic, and they try to see if it's about a cute potty or a cute baby, that's fine. But it's about a criticism of something or try to mobilize a movement, then that's really, really sensitive. Then they would delete it. And then from this known message, news story, they will extract keywords. And then they use the keywords to search all the messages to news stories about this issue, and then delete all of them. I can give you an example. So last year, some soldiers escaped from their army with guns, tried to go back to their hometowns to confront the local officials. The story first was broken at midnight, and then that was deleted. The first one was deleted, but over a day, here and there stories were deleted on the website. That means the first story was picked up by the public, and it got deleted. And later, people used the keywords like soldiers with guns or the name of your hometown to search the stories, and then deleted all of them. So that's kind of the combination of different mechanisms to control the content, and then to keep sensitive information from the public. Did I answer your question?
Okay. Roger, would you like to get up and ask?
I'll speak. Not bad at doing that. One of the things, I mean, it's a wonderful data set that you've amassed, and it's very interesting, but have you sort of looked at also government behavior? I know we can derive a lot of information from looking at social media themselves or news media themselves. And it's true that the Chinese government, to that extent, is a very, very big black box, but it isn't completely black. We actually know, if you piece together a lot of information about what's going on, and can we sort of characterize in some way the way that governmental actors see their role, the way that they try to sort of pull certain tasks towards them, they want to outsource other tasks, do we want to sort of bureaucratic expansion versus bureaucratic avoidance, and so on and so forth?
Yes, exactly. So this is a race. Who will gather the information first? Maybe bloggers, maybe journalists, maybe the government officials, because for instance, China Digital Times, you can see the instructions from the government trying to tell you that don't publish your own story. Use your stories from Xinhua News Agency and other party organs. And don't allow comments, and delete all the stories related to these issues. So the government does send instructions to the news outlets. But the question is, how do they get the information at the first place? So maybe they got it from bloggers or from news portals. And then this is, again, this is a question of sorting mechanisms. And actually, I've seen another report about how the government take advantage of the information. Again, this is a crowdsourcing, mechanism. They actually get information from the public. And in the end, I think the number is 1% of the censored information is summarized and reported to the government. It doesn't mean that it goes to the sink. It means it has a meaning. The government does want to know, because before the problem of the censorship, even though you kept your public from knowing something, the problem is that officials didn't get the information either. That's the problem. The information didn't flow. Right now, the information does flow, but definitely it's kind of a semi-duplex. For a government, everything is kind of transparent, but to the public, it's not that, the flow is not that free, right?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? If I could just ask a last question. It sounds like from your findings, it confirms the degree to which censorship is getting much more sophisticated. That is, you're not blocking the BBC or whatever. They're blocking particular stories about particular topics. And I mean, well, A, is that true? And if it is true, is that good news or bad news? That is, if censorship gets more fine-tuned and precise, is that good news for the public, or is that going to mean that there's more censorship, more targeted? Is it going to release more people to use more censorship globally?
So this is a debate among Chinese people as well. It's kind of like somebody is badly sick, and you're using different medicine and approaches to trying to save the person's life. But you may save the person's life, but you cannot buy much time. It's just a matter of time. And then something has to be done in order for the country to get improved. And also, censorship getting more sophisticated. For instance, you would block, citizens' traffic, whereas you allow the business traffic to go out. But recently, the Open Internet Tool Project released its report. They did a survey. Actually, they found that if you mix your web traffic with business, and then you can actually challenge the Chinese government, because the Chinese government does care about economic growth. They cannot piss off the foreign investors, and they have to allow those people to use internet. But if you can just mix your data with foreign investors' data, and make the censor find to a hard to discrete wisdom, so actually you could get a good chance to get over the Great Firewall. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I still think that's a battle. So you could tell me it's a good thing to finish the battle and to take a loss, or actually you prefer to prolong the battle in hopes that you would win it in the end. So actually, I don't have a clear answer for the phenomenon.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to move on unless there's one. Okay, but we'll have to move on. But we want to thank you for. We're really sorry about the visa problems you've experienced. And is there? Oh, I'm sorry. I did say yes. One last question. Sorry.
I am sorry about my voice. I just wonder whether you have analyzed what are the sources of the stories that were deleted on the portals, because these news portals do not have reporting rights. The stories that are published on news portals have been already cleared by the censors within those news organizations that produced them in the first place. So it's very interesting if you can tell us what are these stories, where do they come from, that they get subsequently deleted, although initially they have already been published in the news media offline elsewhere.
Yes, it's published offline first, and then when they got deleted offline. That's your question?
Yeah. Yes.
That I don't know. And also, I believe there's a pipeline between news aggregators and the news media's own websites. So very often, the news stories would jump onto the website first, and then onto the paper format.
Okay.
And also sometimes news outlets will use, say, Twitter, say on Weibo or other platforms to forecast that, oh, we will cover this story. And I think the economists and other news media are using this technique as well. So we will cover, the meeting of two presidents next week, something like that. So actually, if that's sensitive, the print version wouldn't be distributed on newsstands anyway.
Okay, I think we're going to have to go to our next speaker, but thank you very much again. We really appreciated your talk. I hope it's posted on SSRN or somewhere. Okay? Thank you. Okay, if our other two speakers could come up. We only have 15 minutes, so hopefully we'll be okay. Roger, did you have a question? Did you want while we're getting set up, or?
Oh no. It was just a comment that I find it interesting to see how what is happening at Tencent today really resembles what was happening in London at the stationers company in the 17th century. Mm. You want to control the public sphere. You control the people who make money in the public sphere. Yeah. And that's you couple. You couple profitability with accountability, and usually that's what does it.
It's actually today in the UK. Okay, please continue. Okay. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for this great opportunity for me to share my work with you. My name is Keyi, and I'm a master's student from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. As you can see from the title, this presentation is about the credibility of newspapers in the era of microblog. And let's take a look at the content. First, I will introduce a little bit background what is Weibo and how popular it is, and why newspapers set their accounts on Weibo, and followed by a brief literature review about credibility, one of the most core concepts in communication study. And later, I will introduce my research design, the result and the findings, and then finally, I will happy to answer the questions. And as you may know, being controlled by the communist ideology, the traditional Chinese media, especially the newspapers, have been instrument of political propaganda for over 60 years. And Chinese newspapers, they were censored, monitored, and regulated by the authority, resulting in a considerable freedom of speech. However, these circumstances has been changed by the emergence of microblog. Take Weibo as an example. To put it in simple, Weibo is a Twitter equivalent in China, and it is more popular than Twitter because it has attracted 300 million users in less than 3 years. So 300 million, this number is as large as the whole population in the United States. And based on, Weibo enables the rapid communication between users. And among all the registered users, traditional media, they also set their accounts on Weibo. Based on the statistics, the number of verified accounts of traditional media has reached 4,706, while the media participants reached 12,643. One important factor of the media accounts is that they actually get verified by Weibo. This is the page of Southern Metropolis Daily, and if you pay attention, there's a V here, the blue V here. So this blue V signal refers to a verification of this media in the cyberspace. Such kind of true identity pushes the media to post the information carefully, for it represents the position and attitude of the media. And in this study, we have picked 10 newspapers from Sina Weibo. The 10 newspapers in accordance to the media influence by Weibo. And the media influence is actually composed of 3 indexes: the active degree, the transmissibility, and the coverage. The 10 most popular newspaper accounts are Southern Metropolis Daily, and People's Daily, Guangzhou Daily, and Southern Weekly, and so on. Previous study defined credibility as worthiness of being believed. Apart from that, the American Society of Newspaper Editor measured newspaper credibility by more dimensions. First one is whether the newspaper invade or respect people's privacy. And the second is whether the newspaper concerned about people's life. And finally, whether the newspaper concerned about the public interest or only about making profits. Several research indicate that the credibility of traditional media, they have gradually declined. According to Pew Research Center, 60% of Americans consider their reporting has bias, and only 35% of the Americans consider reporting is generally accurate. And people who believe in content of the daily newspaper dropped from 84% to 59%. Oppositely, the online newspaper, they are judged as significantly more credible than their traditional versions. Not only the readers, but also the online newspaper journalists, they rated each dimension of credibility index significantly higher in the online news than print news. so far for the dry stuff, let's take a look at the research questions. First, I want to study which print newspaper is the most credible one judged by Weibo users. And second, I want to know which newspaper's Weibo account is the most credible one. And second, I want to know how do newspapers' Weibo accounts compared with traditional versions in terms of credibility judged by Weibo users. And finally, I want to know how do newspapers' Weibo accounts differ in terms of credibility between their subscribers, or we can call followers, and non-subscribers. So the data of this research was collected via an online survey containing questions of Weibo usage, credibility, and demographic web variables. And the online survey was posted on sojump.com and lasted for only a week. Unfortunately, we were not able to apply random sampling, so snowballing is applied in this research. And a total number of 815 respondents finished the questionnaire. Let's look at the findings. So the table 1 shows the credibility of print newspapers. So Southern Weekly ranks the first. Here's the mean, and this is the standard deviation displayed. So Southern Weekly ranks the first, and the Southern Metropolis Daily ranks the second, both of which are the successful representatives of the Chinese commercial media. And at the bottom, you can find the Guangzhou Daily and the People's Daily, and they are representatives of the party organs in China. And table 2 shows the credibility of a Weibo account. And the Southern Weekly ranks first, and the People's Daily ranks the last. And if you pay attention, you can find, actually, compare with the two tables, the top 4 and the bottom 2, they are actually the same. And to compare the credibility between print version and Weibo account, we use t-test, and we find that among the 10 newspapers, among 10 newspapers, 8 of them, their Weibo accounts are significantly higher in terms of credibility than the traditional ones. And there are only 2 exceptions. The first one is Southern Weekly. Its traditional version is significantly higher than the Weibo account. And National Business Daily is the only sample that there is no significant difference between its Weibo account and the print versions. And finally, to compare the credibility between subscribers and non-subscribers, we also contain t-test. And table 4 shows that the subscribers of newspapers' Weibo accounts regard them more credible than non-subscribers. And the only exception is Guangzhou Daily. I think the exception of Guangzhou Daily is because it only has 81 subscribers, and it has, so shall I say, just people don't like to follow this Guangzhou Daily. And let me just say some discussion. The survey results illustrate that there's an evident tendency that the Southern commercial media, both in terms of print version and Weibo account, they are more credible than the party organs. And I have 3 explanations. The first one is that the party organs, they work as a political tool and reflects the priority of Communist Party. The partisan journalism, they contain political bias, and the readers won't buy them. Second, most of the southern media, they locate in Guangdong, and the Guangdong province is actually far apart from the political administration center. and which enables the southern commercial publications more rights and space in the pursuit of press freedom. Another factor is that some southern media, they were born after, on or after influenced by the market-driven economy, which makes them spare no effort to attract the readers' interest. That is exactly why people have a broader preference for the southern media's news, therefore they put more trust in them. One of the main goals of this research is to explore whether newspapers' Weibo accounts and their traditional delivered version differ in share a different degree of credibility. And according to the statistics, the answer is positive. And as most respondents, they apparently have more faith in the Weibo account and then the traditional delivered versions. Apart from relatively less censorship of online media, Weibo takes advantage of the network convenience to update information immediately when great things just taken place, as well as provide those freshly baked messages. So Weibo guarantees the users to have a very instant news or messages in every moment. And furthermore, users just put more trust in Weibo. However, as I mentioned, there are two exceptions in this study. First is Southern Weekly, and the second is National Business Daily. Maybe a direct reason for Southern Weekly is that it has 289 people read the print version, but the more people just is that 289 people are become the subscribers of Southern Weekly, and it has 452 readers read the print version. This is probably because Southern Weekly is characterized for its comprehensive and detailed reporting. So this detailed reporting cannot be fit in those limited 140 characters in Weibo. So people tend to read the print version to get the whole picture of the story when they read Southern Weekly. And the National Business Daily, there's no significant difference between the print version and the online, the Weibo version. This is because National Business Daily is a very professional economic-based news. So its users are how do I put it? The professionalism of this daily newspaper results a very smaller gap between the print version and the Weibo version. And compared to others, this is more professional. And finally, another aim of this research is to test whether the perceived credibility in Weibo account differs between subscribers and non-subscribers. And it is distinct to find that Weibo account is justified to be more credible by the subscribers. And this can be fit in the theory of selective credibility. Well, the behavior itself that I follow this media is because this behavior itself can show that I trust it, right? So the subscribers tend to consider what they have chosen to be more believable than the compared to the non-subscribers. Yes, and so far that's all for my presentation, and thank you for your patience.
We've almost run out of time. If there's maybe one question or, yeah, Ralph, yes?
I'm just wondering, this is a broader question about the significance of your findings. So do you have any sense of whether people, in fact, read more proportionally newspapers on Weibo in China than they do elsewhere? I mean, is it like a more common thing? Is it than elsewhere than in the US? Or is it less common? Or do we have any sense of how often people do this and whether they do it more?
According to the followers or the subscriber number of those media accounts on Weibo, actually there are quite a lot. So this number is big. For me, I'm a heavy user of Weibo. I follow like 5 or 6 media accounts on Weibo. I think for Chinese people, they tend to use Weibo to read news because the print version, they got more censorship than the online version, I guess.
Can we just take one? Ms. Song from the, wants to ask a question online. Can we?
She can unmute herself.
Okay, if you unmute yourself, you can please ask your question.
Oh, me?
Yes, please.
Oh, thank you. Actually, I have one comment and question. The comment is, actually, it's always very challenging to draw a sample from social media because actually you don't have a definite sampling frame. So one technique is called respondent-driven sampling. So actually, you could calculate how the results are converging. So if they converge, actually you could have a higher confidence that actually it's a representative sample, even though it's from a snowballing technique. And the second one is you said you just analyze subscribers to non-subscribers or the followers rather than non-followers. But according to my examination, so the most news stories are actually generated by party organs. The top ones are Xinhua News Agency, People Dailies, and the China Broadcasting Network, and so on. They are all party organs. That means they are funded by the party, and they have the most resources to send out their reporters across the country and around the world to collect the stories. And so even though the people may not sense they read news from party organs, but they're everywhere. They're on microblogs. They're also on news portals because very often they're highlighted by Nike, Sena, Tencent, and other news portals in China. So actually, they have influence, no matter that the readers are consciously or not consciously reading the stories from them. So I think there's an influence to be controlled. So I wish that you could control this part of the influence, and then again, to refer your conclusion from say the survey data. And that's actually another comment. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the comment.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, really the last question, Jillian. Yes.
Really surprised
Okay.
to see that you said like 55% of your survey respondents actually subscribe to the print version of Southern Weekend. And so I was just wondering if you knew where the location of your survey respondents were, particularly since you're using a sort of snowball sample. I mean, are they all in Guangzhou? And is that affecting the way that they would perceive the credibility of these newspapers?
Yeah, the location is very important. But actually, I have 5 friends who helped me to get the data. And some are in the northern part of China, and some are in the west. And I'm not sure if the sample can represent the whole population, but it is not limited in Guangzhou or in the southern part of China. Yes.
Okay, I'm afraid we're going to have to break so that because we're going to just pick up in like 3 minutes back here for the wrap up. But it is important we sort of get everybody back together and compare notes on the day. But thank you very much for the